Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Helt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Elliott Kallen, and he is the founder and CEO of Prosperity Financial Group. Welcome, Elliott. Great to be here. Thank you for having me on, Gary. Sure. So, Elliott, what got you started into the financial arena? I mean, what is it that I guess tell us your backstory before you got here.
Okay. And I appreciate you having me on, Gary. So I'm an old accountant, but it didn't work really well for me because I have a personality that doesn't fit the accounting trade. I should have listened more to my father, but what did I know? I thought he was old. He didn't know anything. Right. And so I ended up going to the packaging business after accounting, sold that company. So that was company number one that I began and sold. Company number two was an environmental cleanup company, air and water remediation. Started it and then sold it. And then I was looking around for something else to do, and I knew I wanted to get back in finance. I wanted to do something with finance. I felt there was a great niche for dealing with entrepreneurs and business owners, not just high net worth people, but people that had an entrepreneurial flair about them, where I could talk the talk, walk the walk, and so forth. And I met with all these companies. I was living in New Jersey. I'm from New Jersey. I still say coffee talk in the office. And I was meeting with the Merrills and the Lincolns and the Shearsons and the Smith Barneys and Payne Webers of the world, and nothing was really exciting. And then my wife, who's a Californian, got pregnant with her twins, and she said, let's go to California. And she brought me back to the San Francisco Chronicle, and there was an itty-bitty ad from Lincoln Financial out here. The guy was from the Bronx that ran the ad, so we could speak the same language.
Right.
And he said, why don't you come to work for me? It was an 8-hour interview there, Gary.
Wow.
Here. And he said, why don't you start a business division? We could use one. And that's what I started, and we did that for 6 years. And then we decided that with their permission that we would take the entire business division because it didn't work anymore with the company. And we would move out of them and we'd start an RIA, fiduciary, registered investment advisor. So we were fiduciaries before fiduciary word was cool. We were registered RIA, registered investment advisors before anybody knew what those words meant.
Right.
And we were out there being fee only before anybody understood what that meant too. And so we did a lot of that, and now move forward, 30 years. And now between the two companies, they're almost $1 billion in sales or in assets, awesome. With 5 advisors on one and 50 on the other. So it's been a great ride. I don't know what 40 hours a week of work is. I just don't know.
Right,
I feel like that's part-time. What are you going to do the rest of your time?
Right, exactly.
But I've been doing this for a while, and I'm getting a little bit long in the tooth. I feel that I need to think about the next step for myself and the next step for the company here. And that's kind of an exciting time as well.
Right. Now, you talked a little, talked about wealth management there. So can you talk about the kind of the importance of, kind of the family wealth management and kind of how that looks?
So if it's a great question, it's a very broad question.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, let me narrow it down for you if I could. If you think about family wealth, and I know you've got a lot of advisors, actually a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to you. So if I look at family wealth, there are really 3 phases to entrepreneurship and 3 phases to family wealth. When you're starting your business, entrepreneurs are listening, that's all you do. You start your business, you're not thinking about family wealth. You may be taking all of your family wealth and putting it in your business. You're cleaning up the garbage. You're doing whatever it takes to get that brainchild of yours into a real positive position. And that's phase 1. Phase 2, you've really got something going that's worth talking about. It's giving you some cash. You've got employees. Maybe you're growing. There's some sustainability in there. You're starting to surround yourself with maybe a CFO or a controller. And suddenly, wow, I've got something real. Phase 3 is now we have some real family wealth going on. We've accumulated some money. My kids are in college or getting out of college at this point, or they're done with college. What happens to my money now? What happens to my entity? Do I sell it? Do I bring my children in, which is usually a bad idea? And so family wealth and the dynamic of family wealth is, what do you want for your family? What do you want? Not what they want. They want your money.
Right, of course.
In the nicest ways. They want your health. Maybe they want you to be around. But at the end of the day, they're going to want your money. But what do you want for them? Do you want your name on the side of a building? Do you want your name on a hospital? Do you want your name on a Boys and Girls Club gymnasium? Do you want to be somebody that touches charities with money? Or maybe you want to be involved with charities on a board or be CEO of a charity like I run a foundation or cancer foundation or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to set your children up in a foundation where they have to give away money forever, which gets them invited to every who's who party in the regional area, which is a pretty cool thing to do for your children? Or do you somebody who's not charitably inclined and you just said, look, I made it, give it to the kids when I die. You know, I'm happy to give it to them, give it to my church, whatever it is. That's family wealth. And then what you've done now when thinking about family wealth is you may or may not have been the first generation to create the family wealth, but you're now not going to be the last generation to have the family wealth. And that's a nice feeling as a father, that you are now giving a gift to your children that hopefully they don't blow through the money or smoke the money or snort the money, but they do something positive with the money, just like you did.
Right. Now, I guess, you're talking about that and you're saying that it's like, okay, this is, more generational and it, continues and so forth. With that, how do you go about making sure that wealth does continue to go, so it's not just, as you said, that they're smoking it or snorting it or whatever that they may be doing. How do you go about making sure that doesn't happen?
So there are some great stories that I can give you, Gary, about how to pass along family wealth. We do this for a living every day at Prosperity Financial Group, all the time, because we talk to so many business owners. There's actual family wealth, the actual dollars that you've accumulated. So how do we give that to your children? What's the most tax advantaged way to give it to your children? That's a conversation worth having. You've got a business now that has huge capital gains associated with it. And that's going to be probably the bulk of your wealth. Maybe you've got real estate as well, maybe not. But, upon your death, they all step up. But do you really want to give it away? Is that your estate plan, that I'll just give it to my kids when I die? Or is there a better plan out there than that, to be more definitive than accidental? I'm a big fan of, what do you want? Thinking about, what do you want in retirement for you, Gary? You're now turning 62, 65, 70. What do you want? How do we get you to create the life that you've always wanted now that you've got the money to enjoy it? That's the first thing. Then for your children, assuming that they can stand on their own and you've not created a codependency issue, which happens too.
Sure.
How do I get them the money? Do I get them life insurance proceeds? Do I put it in a trust that I control? Do I put it in a charitable trust that maybe I control? Do I give it away in a trust and give it to a corporate controller, corporate trustee, like a bank, so they can't touch it? Or I just give it to them because I trust that they're going to make good decisions. And then, as I've seen before, maybe you trust more your grandchildren than your children. So maybe you skip that generation and you give it to the generation after you, or you fund their college, your grandchildren's college, so your children get a better time at this than you did. Lots of great tools out there for funding that are leveraging, like life insurance or trust, or not even paying for the life insurance, but borrowing the premium. There are lots of great ways you could do this. Or do you want to be more simple-minded and say, just here, take it? So we try to get you to think about, Gary, if you're the business owner and you're at that age, or you're the high net worth person, that you're thinking, what is in the best interest of my children and me? And first, let me think about it in my point of view with my significant other or spouse. I don't want to enjoy some life. And what's in the best interest of my children, knowing they want it all at the end of the day, or they want you to be happy. No one wants you to be unhappy and unhealthy. Nobody does. Even the most miserable children don't want that. But that's the key for you, is what's important to you, because you've been working your whole life. So I have a brother who's 70. He's a magnificent attorney, a transactional attorney in the M&A world. And he admits he probably will die at his desk. Well, that's not a good, estate plan.
Right.
We had a family friend that owned a series of very large restaurants in New Jersey, and he had a cot in his office in one of the bigger restaurants there. Very, very successful person. His kids were all driving Corvettes before any of us knew what a Corvette was.
Wow.
Beautiful cars. He got up one morning, he took a nap, got up at 3 a.m, checked down the restaurant, saw that one of the tables was dirty, went out and busted the table, died of a heart attack busting a table in his own restaurant at 70-something years old.
Yeah.
It's a bad plan.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of being deliberate, not being accidental. And that's no different than, I don't know, Gary, if you have kids, but you could be an accidental parent and not give any advice and just be nurturing and see what happens. Or you can give some sound advice and still be nurturing and still try to help them and more of a guider into doing the right thing. You probably don't want any of the kids doing what you did because you got yourself in more trouble than you want them getting into.
Right.
But you can't let them not get into trouble because they don't grow if they don't. And so that's being deliberate as a parent. But there are some parents that and I know, Gary, they're almost accidental parents. They're whatever you want to call them, Disneyland parents. They're not interested. Let them figure it out. I'd have to figure it out. They don't need me for that. And most parents aren't like that. They want to give good sound advice. Most business people want to make good decisions with their company. Most parents, when it comes to money, want to leave their children and their spouse set in a way that makes really good sense for them because you've thought it through.
Right. Now, you talk about that in I'm going to say passing it on to the kids or whatever. How do you guys go about trying to educate that next level? My kids. How do you go about trying to educate them to be able to succeed with the money that they're going to get or the wealth that they're going to receive? That's
a great question because it's hard. If you think about your children for a moment, my twins are 30 and my stepchildren are older than that. Everything they know is on their cell phone. They don't like taking advice. They take advice from Google and Amazon and Alexa. That's how they do it. Alexa, give me the 5 best tech stocks to buy today. And they will.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure. And so they don't really have a lot of respect for people that give advice. So what we recommend to people of your generation or, our clients that are 16, 70, even 80, is let's do a Zoom or let's get together with them if they're locally, and most people are not locally. But let's have a conversation about mom and dad's money or their money if you're willing to share that. Not every person wants to share their money with their kids. And the reason for that is because they have people that they know that the kids now want their money, their inheritance, while they're still alive.
Right.
And suddenly it becomes money about, listen, I need a car, Dad. And so, Dad, it's $45,000. Come on, you were going to leave me this money anyway. Let me have it now. I need to get a new house. I need to add an addition to the room. We've been wanting to get a house in Lake Tahoe or the Adirondacks for a long time. Come on, stop being so cheap. Stop thinking about money. So cheap, Dad. And so that's what you want to avoid. And I understand that. Nobody really wants that from their children, but it happens every day too. So good conversation, thought process, think it through.
Yeah, I think, because one of the places I see, at least, here in our schools in Maryland, they're not doing a whole lot with financial literacy. So like you're saying, I mean, so much of what everybody is learning is what they see on the social media. And I see some of the people that are holding themselves out to be so-called experts in all of our areas that are on there that are giving this advice, and it's the worst advice I've ever heard in my life. But it's just trying to, I feel like I spend a lot of time trying to dispel the myths when people are saying, hey, I heard this, and trying to explain to them, it's like, look, that's not a good thing. This is why it's not good, and so forth. How do you guys, work with that next generation that's coming into the money now and helping, be able to combat I'm going to say the AI that's going on out there?
But we have a lot of clients under the age of 40 or 45 today. And most of them aren't going to me. They're going to the younger advisors.
Sure.
So you tend to excite people that are mirror images of you. That's just how life is.
Mm-hmm.
They relate most to you. So I relate to you, you relate to me. Your kids think I'm 1,000 years old.
Right.
That's just how it is. And so, but we have very frank and honest talks. I'm from the New York area. I tend to be very pinpointed and very straightforward, so people can respect the forwardness and honesty that I try to bring to the table on that. You don't try to sell them. They don't want to be sold. What you talk about is roads. Here's a fork in the road that we could take one of these two, and they feel better about that. Which one feels better to you about that?
Sure.
And that's what we talk about. So instead, and if they say, well, what would you recommend? I can say, well, let me tell you the upside of both, the downside of both, and what I would do in your shoes. But both of them are okay.
Right.
So we do put those out there for them, and we try not to make a decision for them. They hate being told what to do. They want to participate.
Yeah, I always look at it that people hate to be sold. They like to be seduced. So you got to kind of give them the full part of it there. In transferring wealth from one generation to the other, what are some of the strategies that you guys are using to do this?
Okay, so that's a great question and a complex question.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with, if you're under the today's magic number of round number $13 million,
Right.
which most people are, that's your living trust. Everybody should have a living trust that gets rid of the state probate issues. Probate is basically a death tax.
Mm-hmm.
And it spells it out. It's simple, it's easy, it tells you where to go. You never make, unless you have a handicap situation or a drug situation in there, codependent situation, you would not make the children the beneficiaries of life insurance. You would normally do that. You would not want to do the trust as the beneficiary of an annuity or life insurance or even your investments.
Mm-hmm.
But it guides it where to go. So upon your death, everything you own basically gets stepped up. Your house, your rental, your everything gets stepped up. And that's what you want. So number one, and the simplest thing to do is create a living trust or a bypass trust or an AB trust. They are the same things. All right.
Right.
Now, let's complicate that up. You're worth more now than $20+ million. Now, how do you want to transfer this? And now we might have a series of irrevocable trusts
Mm-hmm.
or life insurance to pay off some of those taxes. Those are all good things. They're all options. They're all forks in the road. Or lifetime annuities or charitable strategies that use annuities or grits or grats and real property and so forth and so on. You might have some 1031s. How do you want them going? If you've got 3 1031s and 2 children, how do you want them going to your children? Got 3 properties and 2 kids.
Right.
Not so simple, because they're not easy to split up sometimes. And then if you've got a business, then you've got property. So you might own the building, you might own the property, and you've got the business. Well, what if none of them want to be in your business? That's a good thing. Let's just sell it. What if one wants to be in a business and the other one or other 2 do not? How do you want to split this up? And it's a conversation worth having, because there's a difference of being fair and equal.
Mm-hmm.
And they're different. Equal says I take my estate with 3 children and I split into thirds or halves or whatever I got going on. But that's not necessarily true, because maybe I've got one child really interested in running this business and the other 2 could care less. If you split it up equally, then 2/3 of the votes go to the people that don't care.
Right.
And the minority owner is the one working it every day. That's not right for that person. So you've got to think this through. Charity is a really big thing, because you can begin to give away some of your assets depending on the size of it. A personal foundation, if you're worth money, if you build a $5 million foundation as a minimum, and we never do it under 5 million, you can do it for less. Your charity must give away, your foundation must give away 5% a year. It must. It can give away more, but it must give away 5% a year. So that means that if you've got 5 million, it's giving away 25,000. But if you've got 50 million, it's giving away $250,000 a year. Every foundation and charity wants the money from your foundation.
Oh, yeah.
And that means when they do their gala, their golf, their Zoom, whatever they do, they're going to invite your kids to these events. And they're going to get wined and dined because they represent a bag full of gold.
Right.
So you just set your children up in a very nice way where they're going to be wearing tuxedos and going to events in Manhattan or Washington, D.C. or downtown San Francisco for maybe the next 30 years.
Mhm.
And you might set that up in perpetuity with enough life insurance on yourself to really fund that. And now you've got the whole generation working on charity, the next generation. And maybe they'll like it and maybe they won't, but it's a cool thing to do. So lots of ways to pass it along. You want to pass it along with a minimum amount of taxes, but many times paying some taxes ahead of time is a good thing.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
What are some of the common mistakes that you see people making that are trying to do this, that are trying to get this family wealth or generational wealth?
So if you're talking about business and property, the number one mistake that people own is not planning and not thinking about what you want to do with this business. They think if I've done it for 30 years, I know my kids will do it for 30 years. And probably neither one, statistically speaking, want your business. They want everything your business has done for you. They want your ability to go to Europe. They want your lifestyle. They want your car. They want everything. And then you paid for their college versus when you went to college, maybe you worked your way through.
Yep.
They want your results. So now might be a really good time to sell your business and not wait to give it to them upon your death or at some point. So poor planning is the number one problem with your estate. What do you want to do with your planning? And then I mentioned earlier, treating kids equally versus fairly. They're very different.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that I'll make this up, your son's spouse, who's not related to you, may have very different ideas and what to do with your money once her husband inherits it, because her marriage isn't doing so well, or reversal sex, his marriage isn't doing so well. And you don't really know that, but that could change it. Here you do, you leave your son $5 million, and what does he do with it? He puts it in their joint checking account. And she was getting ready to leave anyway. And I don't mean to be sexist.
Oh, no.
She was getting ready to leave anyway. You just made that community property. You didn't mean to, but that inheritance could have been out of the divorce, and now it's counted in the divorce.
Right.
You just gave your exiting daughter-in-law or exiting son-in-law $2.5 million. That doesn't feel good at all.
No.
And so that's that. If you've got a partner in a business and you don't decide what to do with it, then your partner is going to end up taking over the business. And what if your partner dies? The partner's spouse now takes over the business. And what if you couldn't stand that spouse?
Right.
And maybe she's divorce number 2 or 3, marriage number 2 or 3, and you're like, I saw this happen. I had a good friend of mine that with Walt Disney Corporation made all the Sleeping Beauty compacts and lipstick and eyeshadows. He did rouge and he did all those things. He and a partner, right? And his partner died and left all of the stock, which was 50%, to his spouse. The spouse had no interest in the business.
Right.
Didn't understand it. So she gave it to her brother, who was a CPA, all the stock. And now he was partners with her brother, the CPA, and they couldn't stand each other.
Right.
And after a year, they sold the company. And he sold it at much less than what it was worth the day he died. Right?
Yeah, I mean, going back into that, I mean, there's so much, and I've talked about this quite a bit about, when you're setting up your business and, you got to think through all of these things because, in that case, yes, it was the brother-in-law or whoever that came in. But again, if it's you're in business now with the spouse and the spouse doesn't have the same skill levels that your partner had, now you have this person that you're in business with that can't do the things that that the partner was able to do. So that
you gotta change, you gotta adapt.
Detrimental to the business big time.
It's all about adaptation. So that's the same thing for your spouse. Let's assume for a moment you're on spouse number 1, long-term marriage.
Mm-hmm.
You, of course, want to leave your spouse in a position to enjoy the rest of their life after you're gone,
Right.
assuming you're still alive. If it's spouse number 2, right, and there are children that are minors, we've complicated our world up a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you leave it to spouse number 2 and it goes to her children, I'll do the her thing. Sorry about that. With that,
Sure.
Goes to her children, then you've disinherited your own children.
Right.
That's going to end up in court, no
Yep.
matter what. What if it's spouse number 3? Now you've really confused the situation.
Right.
You have fathered children from 3 different women. You know,
Right.
who gets the money? You know, and then it becomes an argument that, well, you know, you were a pretty crappy dad to number 2. Number 1 we're mad at my mom, so I got nothing out of this deal. And number 3 is getting everything. Man, my whole life you really were a bad dad. Even upon death, you're a crappy dad. That's not your legacy that you would like to have.
No.
You could change that. So that's your chance to make amends and say, listen, I may have gotten it wrong here or here, but I'm not going to get it wrong upon my death. And if you're worried about that, put in a trust where that person, instead of getting $1 million or $5 million, gets a lifetime income.
Mm-hmm.
And you know something? Then they have to think of you with every month's check.
Think of you good or bad.
I get $1,145 from my dad. He was a crappy dad, but I'm glad he left me this money. So he ends up in a year or two saying, I'm so glad my dad left me this money. And the conversation goes from you were a crappy dad, which maybe you were.
Right.
You know? But now, you know, at the end, I'm thankful that he thought of me. It's a different conversation
Oh,
to
yeah.
his friends and his or her new spouse.
Yeah, no, big difference, that's for sure. And you know, because I mean, again, you know, like you're saying here, I mean, the family dynamics play into all of this, and it's definitely crazy. Elliott, we could sit here and talk about this all day because there's so many different scenarios and so much, you know, with this. But what have I not asked you wish I had?
Well, if you look over my left shoulder, you'll see a book that I wrote. It's an Amazon bestseller in the financial world, and it's called Driven by Elliott Kallen. It's on Amazon. I laugh. I think it's like $12, but if you get the audio, I think it's $1. It's nothing.
Yeah.
That's designed for entrepreneurs, and it's about leadership and resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, I've created the foundation. If you've got people that are interested in charity, it's important to them. It doesn't matter that I'm in California and they're in Maryland or they're in Chicago. I can talk about how to create charitable remainder situations upon your death, or even upon your life, or in perpetuity for your children's life.
Right.
There are great ways to do that because I've done it for my own foundation. So those are great questions to ask that people don't think about.
Right. Great. So, Kallen, if people want to talk to you, they want to learn more about, you know, your foundation and your business and so forth. Obviously, you know, your book, they're able to go to Amazon, but how can they reach out to you? How can they talk to you?
Great question. The website is prosperityfinancialgroup.com. The email is Elliott, ELLIOT, 1T, at prosperityfinancialgroup.com. And my cell, and I'm in West Coast time, so don't call me at 4
Don't call too early.
I get those every now and then. It's 510-206-1103. I'd love to have a conversation.
Great. And then what about your foundation that you started?
It's called A Brighter Day. Deals with teenage stress and depression. Sadly, Gary, I had a 19-year-old that took his life at the University of Montana. And so we started a foundation to help teens and their families with resources on stress and depression with the goal of stopping teen suicide. And now we touch between 4,000 and 8,000 families a month. It's amazing. And that's at abrighterday.info.
Great. Elliott, I really appreciate your time today. I think you had a lot of good things to say that I hope that our listeners take from that, and really be able to at least at the minimum start asking the right questions to get to this point.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure being here, Gary.
Great. Thank you. Hey guys, this week our guest was Elliott Kallen, and he is this founder and CEO of Prosperity Financial Group. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next week.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.